Have you ever heard of anybody doing that? Staying up that long to finish a game?
Nope.
Uh-oh. Game over.
Do you remember me telling you about Lost Odyssey, Paylord?
I don't know if I remember you mentioning that.
I showed it to you, didn't I? At one time? It was the game. I showed it to you. It had like 4 CDs in it.
I know you showed me some stuff, but I don't remember everything.
Yeah, I was like, that was before I moved. I was showing you all the games and stuff that's set up and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed you Lost Odyssey. That was that.
Oh my god.
Get Tails doll. Did you make that?
No.
Stole it.
The internet's a powerful tool.
Are you seeing this, Sonny?
Alright. Blinky Poo, are you ready?
Yeah, I see it.
Yes, I am.
Alright, do you have a tale for us?
Mm-hmm.
You may begin at any moment.
Okay. This one I missed about Mario Kart Black CreepyPasta. The year was 2009. My brother had just arrived with a Wii for his birthday. It was a black Wii, which was the color of Wii we both wanted. Also had a game called Mario Kart Wii. I remember playing it when I was younger on the SNES, except that the Wii was not at the end. We played for hours until my brother fainted. Mom said I could stay until midnight. Turn out the Wii and take my brother up. I could not help it. I launched the new Wii and played Mario Kart. When I got to the main menu, the screen filled with inverted colors instead of the usual ones. A slower version of Mario Kart Wii theme plays in the background. They are also well invested. I was surprised, but I thought it was a bug that only happened once. I pressed start and the screen flickered before finally turned black. I waited a minute until he came back. Then select my profile and I began to play Mushroom Cup 50cc. When the game started, I was the only rider in the course. The sky was black and it was raining. I wondered what was going on. Then the countdown of 3, 2, 1 now came up, which started the engine and started the race. This time I was not going fast at all. I had chosen, and the vehicle I chosen Mario Wild Wing was selected. Thunder in the distance and crossed in a muddy road. When I came around the first turn, the horror began. There were a lot of dead people with clothes torn and body parts inside. Then suddenly, Mario went ballistic. He began to mourn loudly as they passed all the debris.
It's 3:15.
For Luigi's severed head laying in the side of the road. Why had this worked so perfectly when my brother was playing with me? Then came a sign that said "Turn back now," written in blood, and I was staring and went through the line, and as soon as I did, I unleashed hell. Mario accelerated so fast, it was just a blur. The screen flashed as violent continuous screaming in the background. I heard whispering hard to pass a ruin of what was Mario Kart. Then someone on TV with a panicked voice shouted, "Mario!" Then Mario shouted, you hear realistic wheels drag around the road, and then a horrible thumping sound, accompanied by a snap loaded. The screen went red and then turned black. I was on the verge of a heart attack. Immediately then, the screen came loose. It showed a depressed Mario on top of a hill. Suddenly, the engine accelerated and sped off the cliff, followed by shilling screams of pain and depression. Suddenly, I heard a crash followed by horrible screams of pain. I was scared to death. Little by little, the screen appeared a message, and the message said suicide. I screamed and tried to turn off the Wii, but the screen only showed Mario Kart accident and was suicide over and over again. The hideous demons and whine TV noise, just as the image of the brutal death of Mario characters. Then he picked up the Wii, and then I picked up the Wii and threw it across the room. I could not sleep all night. The next day my mother called me to crush the Wii. My brother was bawling his eyes. I tried to tell my mom the story, but she did not believe me. Then I told my brother the history of what I expected. I did not want to believe it either. I was in shock really. I never wanted to touch that Wii anymore. He never wanted to see a new Wii. Now every time I see a Wii in the stores, I always think of horrible things. So there you go.
Creepy!
Mario Kart Black.
My goodness! Does anybody else have a creepy story? Hey, Lauren!
Someone's gonna have to give me one.
Thank you.
I'll read anything.
Hmm.
So.
You have any scary ones to pass off to Paylord?
Now let's see.
Hey, LD, how are you doing?
Here, I'll send it.
Ooh, I like you already, Alt. ALD.
I'm sending you a link right now to Skype.
Alright.
There you go.
Let's see.
Oh.
I remember this one, but I can read it.
All right then.
Maybe maybe you might remember this one because I know this picture, the evil Mario.
Oh dear.
I think Linky read this one last time.
Uh-oh.
I think, but I'll give it my
Your own
go
spin.
with it.
All right.
Your version of it.
Yeah, I'll see. I don't mind reading it. For the new people who weren't here last time.
ALD, this is for you.
They would like Super Mario 64.
Oh god.
Alright. Because apparently Super Mario 64 is damned. Okay, I'll read now. I could never in my wildest nightmares have ever imagined the horrors that could plague even the most simple of life's enjoyments. The darkness that could invade any world, whether it be real or fictional. It all started the day me and my girlfriend were talking about video games we used to play growing up. And games that we used to enjoy. Over the years of my childhood, I have collected several games pertaining to several different consoles. But we both found the topic of the Nintendo 64 to be the most fun. So that day, we decided to pick up one from my uncle's video game store, and perhaps even pick up one of the greatest Nintendo 64 titles, Super Mario 64. Now when we got there, it took some time and a lot of browsing, but we were able to find the game after about an hour or so in several bins that he had placed throughout the store. The only copy he had it appeared. As well as that, we had found an N64, the very last one that he had in stock, ironically. Best part about it was, he gave it to us for free. He told me that it had been bought and returned nearly 15 times since it came into his possession, and now he just looking to get rid of it. He also told me that, ironically, the game was always returned with it as well. And they always had seemed to be bought together. He had heard that something was wrong with one or the other, and that some people even went as far as to tell him that they were evil, made in hell, things like that. Seeing as how he had only heard the story from 3 out of the 15 customers, I brushed it off as some hysterical story told by the people who decided they simply didn't want to keep the system. An excuse, if you will. And gave him $20 for Super Mario 64. Cheaper gave his N64 for free, though. I went back home after being gone for about an hour and a half. When I got home, I laid the system by my living room TV, started to rummage through old boxes where I kept all sorts of old games, ranging from classic Atari games to ever-popular Dreamcast. It was already actually sort of strange, because in these boxes I found that I owned every major console except for an N64. Well, until now anyways. I pulled out my box with all the N64 games in it, began to dig through it. I found games like The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, as well as its sequel, Majora's Mask, and 2 Castlevania titles for the system itself. Castlevania 64 and Legacy of Darkness. So on. Well, then it was time to hook it up. After everything was set up, my girlfriend decided that she wanted to put in Super Mario 64 first. And after some effort, the game was ready to go. "It's-a me, a Mario!" I called out in its upbeat pitch. My girlfriend decided to mess with Mario's face a little bit before finally pressing start on her purple controller, and then the screen transitioned to the file select screen. There were some files already on the game. In fact, all 4 slots were filled, each having just started the game because there were no stars on any file, so we started deleting them. After we deleted one file, however, the game froze. There was a deafening screech coming from our TV speakers. It sounded almost as if someone was screaming from the game itself. Then my girlfriend turned off the system after about 5 seconds. After a moment or so, she flipped it back on, and we went back to the file select screen. Strangely enough, that file we had deleted on file 1 was back. This time it had 66 stars, though it previously had none. So once more she deleted it, and again it made that loud screeching sound. This time I would swear to God it was louder than before, to the point where we both fell back while covering our ears. Though I was closer to the plug than the system itself, I jerked the plug out of the wall. This time, before we even bothered trying, I took the game out of the system and took it into the kitchen. Turned out it was really dusty, which explained, at least to me, why the game was reacting the way it was, although it was still a bit weird. After cleaning it with a Q-tip, I took it back to the living room, handed it to her. She plugged the console back into the wall, and we were once again ready to go. By now, it was getting dark out, and there was no light in the room, and we couldn't plug in our lamp because the system and the TV took up the outlet. So we were forced to play in the dark. For me, something didn't feel right, because for some reason I was filled with a sense of nervousness that I cannot quite explain. I shook it off and turned on the system. When we were back into the file select screen, each file that was previously there was gone, oddly enough. Which to me confirmed my suspicion that it was just a dirty game messing up. So we started a new game on file 1. The screen lagged like it was a CD or something, but after about a minute it started up normally. Got the opening scene with Peach inviting Mario to the castle, the camera as usual, followed up the pathway to the giant green pipe which Mario leaped out of. She was in control of the game and took Mario directly to the castle. She opened the door to the castle. There was a prolonged pause, which kind of made me nervous. Once again, the loud screeching sound that ruined our game previously shot through our ears. It felt like glass was jabbed into my eardrums. We were both overwhelmed by the terrible screaming and could not even think to reach the system to the plug. About 30 seconds it stopped, and we looked up to the TV. Mario would somehow find his way to Big Boo's haunt, as the mansion had never appeared this creepy when I used to play it, loomed over Mario's head ominously. "What the hell?" I said as I regained myself. My girlfriend was still getting herself together. It took her a minute to process what was going on. I took the controller now and took a good look at the mansion itself. It was nothing like what it was supposed to be. It had castle-like features actually, and it was covered totally in blood and rust. The sky had black and red colors about it, complemented by the black clouds that seemed to pass by in an instant. I noticed that a new tower was now coming out of the mansion, and upon getting a good look at it, I noticed several figures hanging from it. The whole screen faded to white, like it does in the entrance room when you look up the skylight. It goes to the world that you obtained wing cap in, you know. When Mario reappeared, though, it had somehow made it onto the top of the tower, on a platform that went all the way around. The sky had a gloomy look to it as each cloud passed over the tower, as dark as the night sky. Lightning began to rule the sky and illuminate the clouds in its thunderous wake. I tried for the first time to move Mario forward, but a bolt of lightning stopped any movement I was willing to make at the moment. I dropped the controller. My heart began to race. I didn't know what to expect, and I could see by the look in my girlfriend's eyes that a strong sense of paranoia had come over her, because I constantly noticed her looking back behind us in the shadows that covered the room. With hesitation, I took the controller in hand and moved Mario forward about a foot or so. Something fell from the top of the screen and the camera zoomed in on it. It was a depiction of Mario, a noose around his neck. We both yelled out and I dropped the controller on the floor. I moved back as quickly as possible. Mario's clothes were ripped all over, exposing several parts of his body. Ugh. Underneath the clothes, we could make out stab wounds from either a knife or a dagger, which more than likely caused the blood splatter all over his skin and remaining clothing. The most grotesque part of the image were his eyelids and his mouth, sewn shut with blood trickling down his cheeks and chin. I was appalled at the gruesome sight. My heart was racing. I would swear to this day, at the moment that dead Mario fell from the top of the screen, that I heard something run into my bedroom. All the hung figures were of Mario, all the exact same, with eyelids and mouth sewn shut, and stab wounds all over their bodies. I worked up all the courage I could muster. I unplugged the N64, which turned it off. Not at that instant. Before the TV screen went black, the hung Mario's face, underneath his sewn lips, was smirking at us. I didn't want to get up, not even to turn on the lights. I wanted to remain in that exact spot, sitting down, because at least there I felt somewhat safe. For my girlfriend's sake, I plugged in the lamp and I lit the room up. Everything was peaceful, perhaps a calm after the storm, and I took a deep breath, sat back down. Couldn't get that image out of my head, that smirk. I felt powerless as to what my mind wanted to remain on. I sat on the floor next to my girlfriend and hugged her, picked her up and took her to bed. The hell would make a game like that? It had to be the game. It had to be hacked, or the only thing that would make any sense to me. This is what I saw in that game I would define as evil in its sickest form. Without a word between us, we laid in bed for what felt like hours, before one of us finally broke the silence. She told me she wanted to get rid of the game as soon as possible. As I was already late, I decided that it would be best to just wait until tomorrow. Because I was sure that my uncle's store was closed, and GameStop doesn't take games that old anymore. So we stayed in bed and agreed that we would not play that game again. I couldn't get it out of my head still. I wanted to know why or how this was even done. My curiosity got the better of me in the end, and after she had fallen asleep, I just quietly got out of the bed, went back into the living room, plugged in the N64, and didn't turn it on. Didn't have to. The game started itself, and not only that, it picked up exactly where I left off. I was astounded by this because I had never seen an N64 do anything like that. Right then and there, I knew that there was more to this than I knew, and I had to know what. I was fascinated, drawn in, perhaps. I got a good look around this tower. Despite being disgusted, I was horribly fascinated by the entire scene. The paranoia it could convey was intriguing. After a few minutes of looking around, I pressed the pause button, and again the screen faded, this time to black. It took me all the way back to the file select screen, and I found myself with more questions than answers. All the files were back again. File 1 had 66 stars, while files 2, 3, and 4 had none. I tried to remember back to when we picked the file, and I was certain that they were not there before. I tried loading file 4 first, and in response, the game showed me a picture of Mario dead in a pool of his own blood, with his eyeballs and entrails hanging out. After a shudder, it allowed me to hit B and go back. I tried loading file 3, and again I got another appalling picture. It was Mario once again staring directly into the screen with bloodshot eyes that looked so close to real. I really felt that they were. His mouth was gaping open and his tongue missing. Well, it was missing from his mouth at least. I examined further and I realized that Mario's tongue was wrapped around his throat, and it had been strangled with it. I heard a chuckle of sorts, not from the game, but it sounded like it was actually behind me. I ignored it against my better judgment. I had to start up file 2. Video began to play. Mario was strapped down on a table, and the script version of the castle's entrance hall. The stones were all black, blood oozing from the cracks between each of them. Curtains that hung from the ceiling were tattered and falling apart. They appeared to be worn within the years. In the background, the Peach and Toadstool, strapped to both sides of the door, led to the basement area. Toad had the mushroom on his head just torn off. I could make out his skull showing through the still fresh wound, and he was obviously dead. Peach sent me into a state of awe. Her skin was peeled off, and all I could see fully formed was her head, which remained untouched. Jesus Christ! I said silently as the video continued. Mario struggled for freedom as the door upstairs opened and a black mass slowly came through. His footsteps solemnly echoed through the silent hall. The curtains on the ceiling blew casually to its passing as it moved down the steps towards him. Mario pulled and pulled, but found no way to escape the situation he had found himself in. In response, he began to beg for his life and pray. The black mass inched ever closer to the hero, as it seemed as though Mario gave up. The black mass walked around the table and stopped directly in front of Mario. Again, the hero begged, pleaded for his life. He told the black mass that he would do anything, only spare him for any crime that he committed against it. I saw a tear roll down Mario's cheek, and he closed his eyes tightly. A rope tied around his neck, he gagged and took in only heavy breaths. I couldn't see a hand so much as to touch the rope, or where it even came from, but it was indeed there. Just enough slack so Mario could breathe. Big lacerations cut through Mario's clothes, and blood by the gallons covered him in a crimson pool. He screamed, begged, pleaded, asked for death, but it was not given to him. Not yet, anyways. The cuts continued until the floor was covered in the dark red liquid, shooting slowly to the floor. Finally, the swipes and stabs ceased altogether, and there was a deep, methodical silence that only Mario's gasp of misery filled. Before I could so much as think on what I had just seen, his eyes and mouth were just forced shut, and I could see it for myself. A black needle going through both of his eyelids and mouth simultaneously, effectively silencing him over his muffled screams. Even more blood came from the flesh. Fresh wounds and covered up his face. The rope tightened around Mario's neck, although he made no effort to escape. It was over. After a few short grunts, Mario was silent altogether. Not so much a breath or a movement. His face was terror personified. And even though this is a video game, the pain one would have to endure, the torture, my god. Again, the screen faded to black. That Mario smirked at me. I sat in silence. The title screen with Mario's head came up on screen only. It wasn't the same Mario. The background was all black, and the Mario was the same Mario from the scene that I had just watched. He had that smirk still on. After much debate, I decided to keep going. I went to the file select screen, and with all the courage that my heart could muster, I loaded File 1, 66 stars. The game loaded to a demonic laugh, and the black sky filled with blood-red clouds. Repeatedly, I could hear a dark, brooding voice saying, "Game over." Like Mario would. You lost all your lives. Game over. Mario that I was controlling was the same Mario I had seen killed on the title select screen. Screams, torment bodies, and littered the pathway to the castle. The bodies of Peach, several Toads, and at the end a dead Bowser, whose head was missing and whose bodies were impaled on a pike right outside of the bridge. I entered the castle and found myself back at Big Boo's haunt. I didn't question it anymore, I just went with it. The scene had not changed, not even slightly. And ignoring all the graphic details, I entered the mansion to what I was sure would strike my heart in some way, shape, or form. I could feel something circling and closing around me. I ignored it, I had to. I needed to know what this was or what was going on. Something whispered in my ear, I was sure of it. I gulped as the screen transitioned to the entrance hall of Big Boo's haunt, the room with all the doors. The bodies of faceless Marios were hung all over the ceiling, illuminated only by torches. I could feel sweat trickling down the back of my neck as I saw a standalone figure all the way on the upper balcony. I moved Mario slowly towards it. I was afraid. I'm more than willing to admit that. And I've never been more afraid in my life. I jumped up the steps, one at a time, moving cautiously and carefully. There was another hung man, that was for certain, but who it was, never forget. As I reached the body, I hesitated, but zoomed in on it. I began to tremble, my hands were barely holding the controller. The figure was indeed a man hung by a rope. That man had his eyes and mouth sewn shut just like Mario and was bleeding profusely from his eye sockets. That man, all of his pain, was me. He let out a scream, something haunting and bone-chilling, a wail like nothing I had ever heard. The scream began to flicker and turn to static. I tried to turn off the system. I tried to unplug it. Nothing worked. The TV wouldn't even turn off. I saw my corpse through the static burning as the haunting wail had yet to cease. Mario turned his head 180 degrees, looked at the screen, and with a smirk on his face, let out a wail just like I did. My head began to hurt and throb. I fell to the floor, and the last thing I remember that night was seeing a black mass hovering over me. Ah. And that Super Mario 64. Damned.
Nicely done. You haven't reacted to seat there.
All right.
Going for.
I've got the last one. This was requested by ALD234. It is an Animal Crossing Special Edition one. I must warn you, this is pretty graphic. I think. I haven't read it yet. But you might go grab a bright light and a blankie for security. But first, some original art.
Oh god, it's Tom Nook.
Isn't that from the CreepyPasta page?
Okay, here we go. A forgotten soul. It was a normal day, I guess, not doing anything productive per unusual. So through browsing the internet, I find a trailer for a game that happened to be upcoming, Animal Crossing, for the 3DS. After finishing the trailer, I found the urge to play the game was quite strong. I was in the Animal Crossing mood, you could say. Sadly, I'd lost my Animal Crossing cartridge more than 2 years ago, and I had no way of quenching my urge to play it. After watching the trailer again a few times, I could no longer hold myself. I need to play Animal Crossing now! I went into my room hoping strongly that I would be able to find the cartridge. Not much effort needed. I had played the game a ton when I first got on my birthday 3 years ago. But after 2 months of solid playing, I just stopped. Don't really know why, I just had no interest for it anymore. And the game quickly became lost, forgotten, I guess you could say. As I kept searching, I became frustrated. I had turned over all the furniture, looked in all my drawers, but nothing. I decided to call it a night and went to bed a little upset. The next day, I grumpily went to my 3DS and turned on the system. But something was there. Something that really confused me. At the slot of where the cartridge game is showed, there was the game Animal Crossing hovering on the screen like DS games do on the 3DS. I quickly popped the cartridge out of the system, and lo and behold, it was the same one that I was looking at all day yesterday. This confused me a bit, but I did tell my whole family I was looking for this game. It could have been very likely that they found it and put it in my 3DS to surprise me. But alas, I had my cartridge, and I was ready to play. Yes, very ready. I clicked on the icon, and the game started. So at this point, everything seemed to be fine, and the opening with the Nintendo logo, the credits. Then the opening menu came up. You know, the one where it follows one of your villagers as they walk. Well, here was my first sign that something was off. It was what seemed to following a villager, but nothing was there. The screen for sure was moving in an irregular pattern, as a villager does, but nothing at all was there. I found this odd, but continued on, and the next strange thing came up. The options. All the options were there except one. New residence was not there. I was pretty sure at the time that option was in the main menu. A little searching later, I could not find the option for new residence anywhere. A little frustrated, I pressed on continue option and proceeding to play the game on my old file that I played 3 years ago. I started off with a choice of 3 characters. The first was Kem. The 2 others oddly had no name and could not be chosen. I found this weird, for I knew I had never made more than 1 character, though it could have been my sister. So obviously I chose Kem. And it then proceeded to load the town. I chuckled at the town name, which was Happy Town. How unoriginal I was, I thought to myself. The game then let me move, and I headed to the exit of the house. There was a little fear that that idiot Maul would show up, since I did not know if I had saved or not. Luckily, he did not come up, so that was a great relief. I quickly noticed all the weeds that were scattered about. Honestly, any place there could be a weed, there was one. This annoyed me quite a bit, since I would have to pick up all of them if I wanted to enjoy the game. So starting on the job, right away I started plucking the little devils. As I did this, I noticed something a little strange. I had been plucking weeds for about 10 minutes, and yet I had not come across any villager anywhere. This was weird, because when I went to check on the map, there were 10 houses in it. It was also daytime, I should mention, so I decided to check one of the houses to see if the villager was in there. I entered the house only to find it completely empty. I mean empty. There was nothing in the house. No villager, no furniture, not even any boxes were there. When they moved, the music also stopped abruptly. This sort of weirded me out a bit, so at this point I thought the cartridge had glitches from getting dirty, dusty, or something like that. So not caring too much about the weeds, I made my way to see if there was anything else that was glitched or out of order. I made my way to the tailor shop in the game, the Able Sisters. In the shop, everything seemed in place, other than the sisters not actually being there. One thing I noticed quickly was the sewing machine was still going with the fabric being spun around as if she were there. I made my way there to try to speak to her. All I got was the message board to pop up, and that was it. It was completely blank. Nothing was on it at all. Talking to her, again, it showed the same thing. And this was the same thing happened with the town hall museum. They weren't really there. And when you tried to talk with them, where they usually were, they always gave you a blank message box. So finally, I made my way to Tom Nook's place, which was, might I add, was all in its first version when you start a new game. When I enter, I'm greeted with a surprise. Tom Nook himself is there, and he's not invisible like the others. But he does look really odd, as if his textures were all jumbled up. He then proceeded to speak gibberish with the entire group of letters overlapping each other. All I got out of his first message was, long. As I look through the store, I find that there are only 2 items for sale, a fishing rod and a shovel. I decide to buy them, and as I did, I noticed I had no bells, but I was able to buy the items anyway. When buying both items, Tom Nook seemed to say the same thing each time. Though mostly unreadable, I got these 2 words out of the message: see and regret. After buying the items, I made my way to the nearest rock to find the one that dropped gold each time you hit it. With my luck, it was the first one I tried. After collecting the money, I started to dig random holes in the surrounding area. This is where something really creepy and odd happened. As I dug, Kem found something. As he showed it to the camera, I heard the sound of a villager talking, then abruptly cut off. What Kem was holding was what seemed to be a messed up and morphed model of a villager. He then proceeded to put in his bag. At this point, I was a little disturbed after wandering about. Still no villagers anywhere to be seen other than the dead one in my bag. I find there is a fish swimming in the river. I quickly pull my fishing rod out and decide to catch the sucker. Horribly enough, the same thing as before happens. I catch the fish. There are a little sound clip of one of the villagers speaking. And in Kem's hands is another disturbing, messed up model of a villager. I don't really know what to do at this point, so I head back to Tom Nook's place and sell the dead villagers to him. I kind of wanted them gone. For selling them, I receive a huge ton of bells. I had the most you could hold after the selling, and the only thing Tom Nook said when I sold them was, "Thank you." After that, I headed back to Kem's house, and when I entered there was nothing in it. Everything was gone. I was sure when I first started that there was stuff in the house. Feeling a little scared now, I made my way upstairs where the beds are. When I entered the room, I noticed both of the other nameless playable characters were gone. The phone was also no longer there. With nothing else to do, I made my way out of the house again, but this time I was greeted with none other than the mole man himself. Instead of being annoyed, I was freaking out. He looked so weird, unnatural, and his colors were a tone off. Like Tom Nook, his textures were jumbled. And to top it all off, his pickaxe was glitching through his head. He spewed out a bunch of stuff that was unreadable, but this is what I got out of it. Long regret. Tom abandoned boredom. After that, he glitched frozen and stayed there until I noticed I could move again. So after a little bit of nothing, I made my way to the one place I had not yet gone, the town gate. As I went there, everything seemed to be gloomier, or more a darker tone of its color. My character seemed to have a sad expression. When I arrived, one of the watchdogs was there. Well, both actually. The other one, the dumb one, was glitching through the floor, so only really his head showed. I ignored, unable to talk with him. The other one was normal, though. Yup, the only normal NPC in the game so far. When I talked to him, he simply asked if I would like to open the gate. There was no option, so I chose yes. At that moment, the screen scrolled up, the doors swung open, and when it scrolled back down, I saw Tom Nook at the entrance. The screen went black, and I heard a shrilling, creepy, heavily edited, and chopped sound laugh, presumably from Tom Nook. The screen fades back. I'm in Kem's house again, and I made my way down to the first floor only to find it completely filled with a coffin furniture item. I was not able to go outside, so the only option was the basement. Disturbed and scared at this point, I make my way down the stairs. What I find is something I will never forget. The entire village, as messed up models, lay on the floor. The floor is also a dark red color. At the center of them is Tom Nook, but this time he's different. He's all black, and he has completely white eyes. I stood there for a long time. Nothing seemed to be happening, so I finally got the courage to go up to the disfigured villagers, and I'll list out what they say. 1. Why? 2. Alone. Oh. 3. Sad. You. 4. Tears. 5. End. L. 6. Death. E. 7. Darkness. F. 8. Forgotten. T. 9. Torment. U. 10. Anger. S. Finally, I know I would have to talk to Tom Nook. I approach and try to talk to him. The instant I do, the screen then again goes black, and I hear a screeching scream. It was like Tom Nook's laugh. It sounded heavily distorted, and edit to sound like a scream. I fade back in front of my house. For some reason, changed to nighttime. And this time, Tom Nook was just there. And he follows me like he does in the store. Whenever he got close, I hear tormenting, scratching sounds and the distorted sounds of all the villagers speaking. My character had no more color and had a blank face. I couldn't go in any building whatsoever. Whenever I tried, Tom Nook would glitch over me, and the scratching of villagers would get really loud. I would then appear back in front of my house. The mole man is still frozen. Dead there, by the way. So after trying all the places, I tried the final location, the town gate. I was surprisingly able to go inside. Sadly, the dog, the only normal NPC in the town, now had his textures jumbled. Also, the gate was already open. Reluctantly, I went inside. The screen went black again. I heard all the villagers scream, that distorted scream, while Tom Nook laughed. When the screen faded back, I was in the beginning sequence when you're in a cab. But instead of the cab driver, there was a rudely placed model of a black Tom Nook. A text box came up saying, "Why was I alone? I was so bored. So very bored." He then started to laugh again. It stayed like that for what seemed like a couple of minutes, and then the game restarted. There was no sound at all anymore, and at the title screen it was following the black Tom Nook. He held what seemed to be a bloody shovel. I clicked on the continue option, picked Kem, whose name was now dead. It then loaded the town, Happy Town. Once it finished, the character just stayed in the bed. I couldn't move at all. It was like this for quite a while. Then I heard it, that laugh. It was getting closer, yet I couldn't do anything. Then I saw him pop in and slowly approach Kem. And then he stopped and looked at Kem and says, "Become forgotten." I hear his scream for the first time, and then my 3DS crashes. I reboot and try to relaunch the game, but there's always error saying the cartridge is unreadable. The cartridge now lays in a box under my bed, left there. I would throw it away or give it away, but something keeps me from doing so. I want to understand why, or how rather, how I can fix what I have done, the pain I've caused. Yes, maybe I can restart. Maybe I can learn to remember them. Maybe the forgotten can forgive.
Wow.
And that concludes CreepyPasta 2014. Thank you, gentlemen, for your contributions. And thank you, ALD, for your lovely suggestion of Animal Crossing. Did Sunny wet the bed?
What? Everybody okay?
I don't know.
Yep.
Yep. What
Only
do you mean,
got
yeah?
one.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually eating while I was listening to him.
But it was all talk of blood and dump and everything.
Actually, I find that extremely satisfying while I'm eating.
I hope so, ALD. I think you would really, really like it.
Yeah, usually when I'm watching TV, I like to watch lots of blood and gore while I'm eating. That may sound extremely weird.
That it does, sir. That it does.
But there's one movie that I don't like. It's The Ring. I can't stand that movie.
Oh, yeah, that movie. I don't like to talk about that movie.
What did it do? I'm just wondering what kind of effect did it do to you?
It was the only movie where I legitimately got scared.
Dang.
Mm-hmm.
First movie that scared me was the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That one scared the effing crap out of me.
Yeah, that would.
But I was like 5. I was like 4 or 5 at the time,
Oh my god.
and my mom was asleep, and my dad let me watch it.
Killer
couldn't.
Bunny guy? Oh, you're I know what you're talking about. It's the imaginary friend, right? He's like a skull, but he's in the shape of a bunny. Oh crap! What's the name of that movie?
What's that other movie? It was the one with Christopher Lee, I believe. It was like
Superman.
No, I was. What?
I may be thinking of the
Oh,
wrong
that's
one.
Christopher Reeve. Never mind.
Yeah.
It's the one with the clown that kills people.
Oh, it.
It.
I
was
love
thinking
that
of the wrong
movie.
name.
I love that
Anyway.
movie.
Well, Tom, I think you're thinking of Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko. That's
I don't
it.
know if that's
Donnie
I don't
Darko.
I don't know if that's the movie he's thinking of.
Was that like was that Stephen King or was that I don't know what that it was.
Stephen King. Yeah, that was Stephen
Yeah,
King.
Stephen King. That was my very first movie I watched. It scared the crap out of me. Then it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And Friday the 13th, I just thought it was stupid.
I have them all. I love them.
Jason, it was stupid. And Friday the 13th, it was stupid. They were
What-
good, but you know it's fake. The only movies I really care for is it's like zombie movies. I like those.
Bunny Man. What the hell is this? Also, like a low budget one. Pretty Girls the Young? What? That looks horrible, ALD. What made you watch that movie?
That last creepypasta you said was kind of a little bit disturbing. It was a little disturbing. Wasn't that bad though. It was
Yeah.